Good morning, friends. Good morning, and welcome to another episode of PB Reads the Bible. And this is episode 8 on our journey through the book of Esther. It is our last episode for Esther. We will finish this book today because we're going to look at chapters 9 and 10. We can do that because chapter 10 is only 3 verses long. Excuse me a moment. I seem to once again be dealing with a head cold, so I apologize for how I sound. But yes, this is PB Reads the Bible. I'm PB, Pastor Brian, pastor here at Christ United Methodist Church. And this is that time when we gather together, read from the Bible, and share some information, some context, help explain it. And I know many of you have been following right along right from the very beginning. That's awesome. Others have joined more recently, and that's also awesome. We're glad that you're sharing it and then continuing to come back. But I like to know who you are because Facebook only tells me a number, and I prefer to know who it is. So here's your romper room roll call, and I see we've got a couple folks already checking in that they're with us today, that they have joined our small group. Marcia, good morning to you. And good morning to Shar. Good to have you both here. And Ron joining live. Good to have you here as well this morning. And it is morning. It's morning for me. It's Tuesday, March 28th, and it's 9:03 right now. But I know for some of you, you're joining at some other time. Still use the comment section to check in, to let me know that you were there. And if you have comments, questions, or anything you want to lift up as a prayer, put that in the comment section, whether you're joining live or some other time, because I do go back in, look to see what kind of comments, questions, and prayer requests might be there. And I say prayer requests because we are a small group. That means we share life together. So whatever it is that's on your heart that you want to share, that whatever is lifting you up or whatever you need lifted up, share it. Let us know. I'm going to ask for prayers for my sister-in-law, Maureen, who is having her knee surgery tomorrow. So if you would for prayer for Maureen, not only today, but if you'd also keep her in mind tomorrow during her surgery. Don't know what time, but I'm sure it's sometime in the morning that will be taking place. So prayers for her as she goes through that. And lots of other stuff taking place in our lives and in our world. You've probably seen some of the video news footage from Mississippi and Alabama. Wow, those tornadoes were tremendously destructive. You've probably also seen the video from the school shooting in Nashville. Wow. I was watching the Nashville mayor. They had the Nashville mayor on TV this morning. Very well-spoken individual. Very seems like a good man, you might say, a good person, a strong person. Got the sense of a person of faith, and level-headed, not interested in the politics of things. Very, very, very level-headed. I think that's a good word. It's a good word. Good morning, John. Good to have you joining this morning as well, as we finish up Esther. So that's what we're going to do. This is going to finish up Esther as we look at chapters 9 and 10. So we're going to be taking a couple week break because no use starting tomorrow when next week is Holy Week, which is difficult, and then I'm going to be on vacation somewhere in there. So I think it's the week after that, actually. It's just there's a lot going on the next couple weeks, so we're going to take a couple week break. We'll start back up after my vacation week. I'll let you know exactly what day, and I will also put out there, let you folks know what book we're looking at next as we continue our journey through the Bible. announcements. Well, I guess first of all, worship this Sunday, 8:15 and 10:45. Both of those are in person. 10:45 is also live streamed if you can't make it in person. And then there's the Holy Week schedule, all kind of stuff going on next week. So I encourage you to check out the announcements from the order of worship from this past week, or look for them in this coming week, and check out the website, umcchrist.org. And that's the recently updated, revamped, etc., revitalized website. Check that out, and let us know what you think of that one as well. And the announcements and stuff will be there. Let's have a moment of prayer as we turn to our reading. Good morning, God, and thank you for this day. We thank you for all the ways that you are active and alive in our lives and the lives of those we love. We thank you for these opportunities to gather together in this fashion, to read and to learn more about this book we call the Bible, and what it can mean, what it meant to the folks who read it the first time or heard it the first time, and what kind of impact or what difference it might make for us. We thank you for your mercy, your grace, and your healing power. And we ask for your presence, your strength, your healing power to be with Maureen, and all those who are taking care of her and helping her. Give her peace and calmness as she waits throughout this day for her procedure tomorrow. And then we do pray in advance for a successful surgery and rapid healing. And we lift all of these things to you in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. Oh, okay. Ron says, since we'll be taking a short break, everyone have a God-blessed and happy Easter. He has risen. He has risen indeed. He has risen indeed. Amen. All right. So we're going to look at chapters 9 and 10. Before we do, there's disagreements among scholars on whether or not these chapters are actually part of the original story. Oh, good morning, Bonnie. Some scholars say that it should end with chapter 8. Others say it actually ends in the middle of chapter 8. Others say that chapter 8 should be longer. There's more verses, depending on, which reading you're going with, and that was the original. Ultimately, we don't know. Ending at the end of chapter 8 works very well. I mean, there's a lot of justification for saying that's where proto-Esther, shall we say, the original story ends. There's a lot of justification for that. One, everything seems to be basically wrapped up, and the courtier tales, the courtier tales of the time would end in that fashion. The action ends in the court. So, there's justification for that way, as well as some others, and we'll talk about some of the others. Someone, though, original author, some other author, editor, has added 9 and 10. They're part of the book. They're part of canon, so we're going to read them and consider them as part of the story. These two chapters seem to, the sole purpose, really, seems to be to lock in the festival of Purim, of why and when it is celebrated. And it really seems to lock it in. That was the sole point of these chapters. So, and again, remember, not a historical story. This isn't a historical document of actual events. This is a tale. And it seems to be that was the point of the whole tale, was just to understand Purim and why they were celebrating this Gentile, this pagan festival. All right. Now, in the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, on the 13th day, when the king's command and edict were about to be executed, on the very day when the enemies of the Jews hoped to gain power over them, but which had been changed to a day when the Jews would gain power over their foes, the Jews gathered in their cities throughout all the provinces of King Ahasuerus to lay hands on those who had sought their ruin, and no one could withstand them, because the fear of them had fallen upon all the peoples. Pause. That first verse, that opening verse, really seems to, especially in Hebrew, the NRSV loses it a little bit. The NIV, which is a paraphrase at this point, seems to get the context and the tone better than the NRSV. The NRSV is more literal, but it misses the point. The NIV says that now the tables were turned, and that gets more the point of the author of this story, pointing out the irony on the very day that the enemies of the Jews, which until this point had only been Haman the Agagite, although it had been hinted at that there must be others as well. And here there are others, and they think that they're going to have the opportunity to get the upper hand. And on that very day, the tables were turned, and the Jews got the upper hand over them. And the Jews gathered in their cities throughout all the provinces to lay hands on those who had sought their ruin. The language throughout this telling of the story in chapter 9 is very offensive, not defensive. The Jews aren't hanging back waiting. The author of this story is using language that is more offensive than defensive. They're not just protecting themselves, they're going out and they're attacking. And no one could withstand them, because the fear of them had fallen upon all peoples. Now, what's the fear? It could be the very physical fear of wondering, seeing these people coming at them, attacking. But it also could be more of a political fear, because they're now afraid of Mordecai. Remember how high up he's become. And the fact that this minority seems to be gaining so much strength and support. Although they're a minority in number, they become more of a majority in power, is what seems to be taking place. Picking up, all the officials of the provinces, the satraps and the governors, and the royal officials were supporting the Jews, because the fear of Mordecai had fallen upon them. Pause. That most definitely is that political fear, because of where Mordecai now is positioned, how he is now positioned. For Mordecai was powerful in the king's house, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces as the man Mordecai grew more and more powerful. Pause. I know I just paused, but pausing in, because that line, the man Mordecai, we don't pick up on that very well, but it's kind of like code. That's how Moses was described, the man Moses. So it's almost like a title, and it's really elevating Mordecai up to a level equal to Moses, the Jew par excellence, we might say. And they're elevating him to that stature, that status, with this idea of the man Mordecai. So the Jews struck down all their enemies with the sword. Again, very offensive language, not defensive. Slaughtering and destroying them, and did as they pleased to those who hated them. Pause. Now, and again, the author has been clear throughout the story. It's not all Gentiles, but there are a number of people who are anti-Semitic and hate these Jews, hate the Jews. It wasn't just Haman, but it's not everybody. It's not everybody. So this is what's taken place in all the cities throughout the empire, we're told. Now things are, the story is going to come back closer to home, close to home, in the citadel of Susa. Remember, now there's the city of Susa, and within the city of Susa is the citadel, which includes the palace. So in the city of Susa, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 peoples. Pause. Again, It's not a historical tale. This is just a story. This is pure fiction, and especially with that number, because it's definitely hyperbole. Based on the size of the city of Susa, based on the size of the city of Susa, and knowing that the citadel is just a smaller thing inside of it, there's really no way that could be 500. And it says people, but the NRSV says people. The NIV says men. Men is more accurate. It's clear that it's men. They're not mentioning women and children at all. Although they had mentioned them earlier, they're not mentioning them now. Oh, good morning, Maureen. Hey, it's perfectly okay that you're a little bit late. We shared about your surgery tomorrow. We've lifted you in prayer, and we will continue to do so, my dear. Okay. So the author says they've killed 500 in the citadel of Susa. Now that's like I said, that's the very center of the city. Would this indicate that the fighting, is the author trying to say that there was actual fighting in the palace? I'm sure that's not the case, but perhaps perhaps what he's trying to say is, if we remember back to Haman's decree, and when they talked about the city of Susa, they were all confused by it. And then when Mordecai's edict went out, the city of Susa rejoiced and celebrated. They were all, yay, we don't have to try to kill Jews. We're on the same side as them. But within the city, within the bureaucracy, it would seem some of Haman's plotting and planning and tentacles are still there and enwrapped in the bureaucracy, in the Persian bureaucracy. That would seem to be what the author is trying to indicate here. And then they're going to use a bunch of names that I can't pronounce, so I'm going to skip over the names, okay? They killed, blah, 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 the 10 sons of Haman, son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews, but they did not touch the plunder. Pause, okay. Now, all this throughout the empire has been taking place on one day, on the 13th of Adar. Let's remember that. We'll get to that in a second, though. What does this ending of this section mean? Why did they kill the 10 sons? This would be the idea of intergenerational revenge. This is intergenerational revenge, holding the sins, holding the sons guilty of the sins of the father. And in the same way that even though Haman's dead and gone, which should have been enough, no, we're seeing this retributive vengeance placed upon the next generation, But they did not touch the plunder, even though they'd been given permission to plunder and take whatever they wanted. They did not touch the plunder. Which, if you went through Samuel with me when we did that one, Saul did the exact opposite. When he wasn't supposed to take the plunder, he did. And that was one of the things that ended up costing him the kingdom, costing him his reign. So it's being very clear, we didn't take any of their stuff. Picking up from there, the 11th. So that's the 13th of Adar. That very day, the number of those killed in the citadel of Susa was reported to the king. So pause. The king seems to be getting information very quickly all of a sudden, right? He's actually getting information as it's happening. The king said to Queen Esther, in the citadel of Susa, the Jews have killed 500 people and also the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is your petition? It shall be granted you. And what further is your request? It shall be fulfilled. Pause. So he relays, and he's almost like showing a better kingship, right? He's getting information, and he's telling the queen, he's informing the queen, which is weird, of what's taking place. They've killed this many here in the citadel. How many have they killed across the kingdom? What more do you want? And again, he uses that language almost word for word that he used previously. What is your petition? What is your request? It shall be granted you. It shall be fulfilled. It's that parallelism between those things. Petition granted, request fulfilled. Now, Esther, listen to Esther. Verse 13, Esther said, if it pleases the king, let the Jews who are in Susa be allowed tomorrow also to do according to this day's edict, and let the 10 sons of Haman be hanged on the gallows. Pause. She replies very similarly to how she had replied previously a couple chapters ago, but much more bluntly, not as loquacious. She's not as tender with her language, we might say. It's almost blunt. If it pleases the king, do this. Do this. But only in Susa. See, only in Susa, let them have a second day. Let them also have the 14th day. Why do they need 2 days? Because the festival is going to be a 2-day festival, or already is a 2-day festival, and we have to explain a reason why it's a 2-day festival. Purim. And let the 10 sons of Haman be hanged on the gallows. And both of them say hanged on the gallows. It shouldn't, because they're already dead. It's quite clear in the Hebrew that it's impaled. They want the bodies shown. They want the bodies publicly denigrated, because a dead body being put out publicly is a terrible curse in Hebrew tradition. In the Hebrew tradition. So they want these bodies to be brought out and publicly displayed. And how? Impale them on a spike, which is how their father was killed. So it seems to be like the author is going full circle on all of this. The author is also going full circle on how far Haman has fallen. Remember Haman, when he was bragging to his wife and his friends, he bragged about his wealth, his position, and all those sons that he had, right? His wealth, his position, and all those sons. He has lost his wealth to Queen Esther because she now possesses everything that he had owned. He lost his position to Mordecai, who is now second only to the king. And now he has lost his 10 sons. Complete total reversal of situation. And yes, and he's dead. Continuing, verse 13. So the king commanded this to be done. A decree was issued in Susa, and the 10 sons of Haman were impaled. The Jews who were in Susa gathered also on the 14th day of the month of Adar, and they killed 300 persons in Susa, but they did not touch the plunder. Pause. And again, it should be 300 men in Susa. And again, they did not touch the plunder, even though they could by rights. They could, but they didn't. But now we have an explanation for 2 days, because the festival of Purim takes place on the 13th and 14th of the month, or 14th of the month, depending on where you are. In most of the world, it's on the 13th, but in the cities, or certain cities anyway, it's on the 14th. Okay, so it's a 2-day festival. And I'm sure there are places that actually celebrate it for the full 2 days rather than just one or the other. But the author has done the job of explaining why we have this celebration. And now it goes in to explain kind of what the celebration should look like. Now, the other Jews who were in the king's provinces also gathered to defend their lives and gained relief from their enemies, and killed 75,000 of those who hated them. But they laid no hands on the plunder. Pause. Again, not even they touched the plunder, no matter where they were. Continuing, 17. This was on the 13th day of the month of Adar, and on the 14th day they rested and made that a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews who were in Susa gathered on the 13th day and on the 14th day, and rested on the 15th day, making that a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore, the Jews of the villages who live in the open towns hold the 14th day of the month of Adar as a day for gladness and feasting, a holiday on which they send gifts of food to one another. Continuing. Mordecai recorded these things and sent letters to all the Jews who were in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both near and far, enjoining them that they should keep the 14th day of the month of Adar, and also the 15th day of the same month, year by year, as the days on which the Jews gained relief from their enemies, and as the month that had been turned for them from sorrow into gladness and from mourning into a holiday, that they should make them days of feasting and gladness, days for sending gifts of food to one another and presents to the poor. So the Jews adopted as a custom what they had begun to do, as Mordecai had written to them. Pause. Notice a couple things about this passage. Mordecai sends out this declaration, this edict, but only sends it out to the Jews, doesn't send it out to all the leaders of all the provinces or any of that stuff. And he also sends this in his own name. He doesn't send it in the name of the king. He only sends it in his own name. Interesting stuff. Does that indicate his position? Continuing, Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had plotted against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast pur, that is, the lot, to crush and destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he gave orders in writing that the wicked plot that he had devised against the Jews should come upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. Therefore, these days are called Purim, from the word pur. Thus, because of all that was written in this letter, and of what they had faced in this matter, and of what had happened to them, the Jews established and accepted as a custom for themselves and their descendants, and all who joined them, that without fail they would continue to observe these 2 days every year, as it was written and at the time appointed. These days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, in every family, province, and city. And these days of Purim should never fall into disuse among the Jews, nor should the commemoration of these days cease among their descendants. Again, just reiterating and establishing the thing. Notice the repetitiveness and the slight differences, though, in the story. So this seems to be one of those extra additions or clarifiers, or there might have been multiple endings to the story, and somebody decided to try to pull them all together, because some of the details there in that section from 24 through 29, 28, don't match up with some of the details from earlier in the story, from the main story. Because it says that the king gave orders and stuff like that, which the king never did. He wanted that little bit of distance, a little bit of different distance. Okay, now back to Queen Esther, because Mordecai seems to have, like taken center stage for a little bit there with his letter. Now we have Esther writing a letter. And again, it's one of those multiple choice endings. Queen Esther, daughter of Abihail, along with the Jew Mordecai, gave full written authority confirming this second letter about Purim. Letters were sent wishing peace and security to all the Jews, to the 127 provinces of the king of Ahasuerus, and giving orders that these days of Purim should be observed at their appointed seasons, as the Jew Mordecai and Queen Esther enjoined on the Jews, just as they had laid down for themselves and for their descendants regulations concerning their fasts and their lamentations. The command of Queen Esther fixed these practices of Purim, and it was recorded in writing. Okay, so she's just writing another letter, setting the holiday. Are you getting the point? The whole story's been building to this. Why are we having this holiday? Lastly, chapter 10, verses 1 through 3. King Ahasuerus laid tribute on the land and on the islands of the sea, all the acts of his power and might, and the full account of the high honor of Mordecai, to which the king advanced him. Are they not written in the annals of the kings of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was next in rank to King Ahasuerus, and he was powerful among the Jews and popular with his many kindred, for he sought the good of his people and interceded for the welfare of all his descendants. One sec. And so ends the book of Esther. Although there are other versions of the story which have other pieces throughout it and even different endings. And that ending, again, it's just fictional. Mordecai does not appear in the annals of media in Persia. So it's just a story. But we we understand things, and we can look at the story and see God in the background. God is never mentioned. But the author does seem to have some idea of there is providential interaction, something, there is some sort of providence, and we can interpret that and read that as God acting in the story. There's nothing wrong with doing that, as long as we keep in mind that that's not exactly what the author was saying. We don't know for sure. Anyway, he never clearly states anything about God being active in it. So, my friends, there we have it with the book of Esther. That's it for today, and that's it for a couple of weeks. Thank you for joining me today with our small group. We pray that this has been beneficial for you, that you've learned something, relearned something. As you go about your days, not just today, but every day, keep those eyes and ears, both physical and spiritual, to everything our living, loving, active God is doing in your life and in the lives of those around you. When you see it, when you hear it, say, thank you, God, and then tell somebody about it. Until we meet again, my friends, be blessed. Be blessed. Bye.